Welcome to A Better HR Business, the podcast that looks at how HR consultants and HR tech firms grow their businesses and how they help their employers to get the best out of their people. Remember, for show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Okay, let's get started.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Great to have you along. I'm delighted to have today's guest. Today's guest is a well-respected entrepreneur and trailblazer in the EdTech and IT training space, someone who has built, scaled, and exited multiple businesses throughout his career. Adda is best known as the founder of GTS Learning, an internationally respected training content company that served learners in over 70 countries before being acquired by CompTIA in 2018. But his journey started much earlier, from launching one of the UK's first word processing bureaus back in the 80s to building barefoot computer training into a top 5 UK IT training company. Robin has seen the full spectrum of what it takes to build a business. His career has been marked by resilience, innovation, and smart strategic thinking, from suing Apple of all companies and winning, to pioneering global learning partnerships long before remote learning was even the norm. He recently captured his entrepreneurial journey in his new book, The Bumpy Road to Success, which is packed with business lessons, war stories, and moments of real insight. Now he's back with a bold new mission to fix the broken skills training ecosystem, and his latest venture, SkillsAssess, uses AI-powered assessments to help businesses and training providers truly understand what skills people have and what training they actually need. It's smarter, faster, and a more targeted way of doing things. It could just be the missing link in workforce development. Robin, of course, I just came up with all of that off the top of my head, but welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to see you.
Good to be here.
Fabulous. So let's dive on in. You've had an incredibly varied career, from starting out in banking to becoming a serial EdTech entrepreneur, as I was describing there. What drew you to start your first business, and what kept you going through some of those bumps in the road that we've described?
To be an entrepreneur, you have to be slightly nonconformist. You don't like necessarily taking orders. And I was always a bit rebellious, I think, from my school days through to my first 2 or 3 jobs. But after a while, I was really excited by the idea of doing my own thing. And I remember working in an investment bank, and my boss and I were doing merger and acquisitions. And he decided to buy a small business that had come across his desk and asked me if I wanted to participate. That was my first experience, because we didn't manage to get that business going. But I think that seeded it. And then after another spell in banking, I decided I wanted to set out on my own.
Fabulous. I mentioned it, but one standout moment in your book is the legal battle with Apple in the 1980s, and you won. What did that experience teach you about business resilience?
Well, I think you've got to stick up for what you believe in. That was a crazy time. We were selling Apple computers, and we were arguably number 1 in the UK. And the reason that we did so well was because Apple had a series of components. It wasn't a complete system in itself. You had to buy all the components separately. So the drives, the monitor, the keyboards. And all our competitors bought everything from Apple, so they got a straight 30% margin. And we decided to go out and source the drives, which were Japanese, the monitors, which were Italian. We built the cards, the connecting cards for the computers ourselves. And so our margin shot up. And so we could actually sell the Apple for a lot less and still make a lot of money. And the dealers all went up in arms and said that this wasn't fair. So Apple decided to stick with its dealers, broke the rules of resale price maintenance, and cut us off. And clearly that was not legal. The problem was we didn't have a lot of money to take them on. So it took us 2 years to build up enough money to fight back, which was a great shame because we lost our position in the marketplace. But you just got to stick up for what you believe in, if you can, as far as you can. And that's what I learned from that lesson.
I love that, yeah. And after the turmoil we've been through with COVID and the shutdown and all sorts of things, I think resilience is just so much more important. I think people are far more aware of it these days in terms of business, right?
Definitely. I mean, I think if you're an entrepreneur, if you run your own business, resilience is key, because it's not always going to go well. You just have to stick with it, persistence, keep going. That's what eventually pays off. I remember when I was in the very early days of GTS Learning, and one of our team said, look, things aren't going too well. He said, but we're working so hard, it's going to have to pay off. doesn't necessarily pay off that fast. I think that the moral of the story is you've just got to keep going. And, if you're doing the right thing, you're going to succeed eventually.
So, yeah, looking back over your entrepreneurial journey, is there one particular decision or moment that you're particularly proud of?
There are so many adventures that I've experienced. It's so difficult to pick any one. I think I was particularly proud of the fact that having had a training in corporate finance, I always imagined that when you transacted, you came to sell a company, that you'd pull in all the professionals to help you, because that's what I was trained to do. When it came to selling GTS Learning, I had a great mentor, if you like, who was telling me what I should be doing, and a very helpful lawyer. But basically, I had to do it all myself. I had to write to all the shareholders. I had to record all the shares. It was a really complicated exercise, and I was very proud. But also, we started our negotiations. They took about a year, and we really managed to negotiate a very good exit eventually. But to start with, the initial offer was really not at all what I would have liked. So, yes, I think lots of different experiences. I can't pinpoint any one, but I could talk about any one of them for a long time.
So after selling GTS Learning, many people would have stepped back, taken it easy perhaps, but you've jumped into a new venture. What inspired the creation of SkillsAssess?
There's lots of things. I think, it's also family circumstances. I had kids at home. My wife was working. I wasn't going to pack up my books and close my office and go and play golf. Plus, I think we were all driven in our own ways. And I have an insatiable desire to take on a new challenge. And that's what I did. And we've landed on an incredible idea. And seeing this to fruition is going to be very exciting. I think when I started, I've had some exciting moments. So if I just rewind, I remember when I was running a training business, one of my ex-employees had gone to work for Hewlett-Packard. He was working in Paris and he came to visit me. And we were sitting in one of the empty classrooms and he said, "Have you heard of the internet?" And I said, "No." And today we've built a business which uses AI and is giving us so much power and such perspective. And I think these are all, chapters that I'm living through. I'm very lucky to be witnessing them. I think it's an extraordinary experience, really.
I agree. We've come so far. My grandfather used to have a business, hardware type thing, and he got branded rulers, which we as school kids took one each, but it had a little pop-up calculator, which was incredible. A calculator on a ruler is mind-boggling. And now here we are talking about AI, so I agree. You mentioned you've come up with an incredible idea in SkillsAssess. Tell us about SkillsAssess. What is it? What does it do?
Well, we also have another business that we're running, which we started, which actually has a similar name to one of my previous training companies. It's called Barefoot eLearning. And I started that initially when I sold GTS Learning. And after a while, I realized that although it's a $1 trillion business, e-learning is so diversified and so accessible to so many people. And it's not really the solution. And so after looking at this for a while and figuring out, Barefoot eLearning has an amazing product and it's completely customizable, personalized learning. But how can you get that message across? So we thought we'd reimagine learning and we'd turn it upside down and we'd start with an assessment product. So we'd assess people, figure out where we'd offer this assessment to clients. We'd figure out where the employee candidate skills were, and we'd then provide them with a recommended learning pathway. So we started doing this, and midway through, we thought, right, well, we should use AI because this will probably make a difference. And we had no idea how fast this was going to grow and how big. And it takes away all the barriers. So we can now effectively tackle more or less any project because of the way we've designed this product. So AI has completely transformed this product. That's where SkillsAssess has taken us today.
So, I mean, the classic analogy in business is the gold rush. People think the money was made digging for gold, but it wasn't. It was the people selling the pickaxes and the shovels. And you're saying, well, yes, there's a $1 trillion industry out there for e-learning and content, but these days YouTube has more content creators than consumers. So there's just so much content out there. And you're saying, well, let's focus on the area of how do we actually assess the workforce and find those skills gaps for that e-learning to then be applied. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, basically, I've spent the last 2 businesses at least addressing skills gaps. In the past, the way the market has worked is skills gaps are resolved by providing learning. But the point is people have less time. Providing prescribed learning is not necessarily the right way to go about it. So many people have been, in my experience, from our EdTech, have had to go on courses which they didn't need, learning which didn't help them. And today, we have 30% of the workforce in the UK doesn't have the right skills to carry out their work. So there's a serious skills gap issue. And the point is, how do we train these people to get into work productively? Productivity, skills gaps are words that you hear the whole time now. What SkillsAssess does, well, firstly, we try and find out what the organization or the job role might be for these people. It then produces, using AI, a curated set of questions, which will then identify skills gaps for each individual person and create a personalized learning pathway. That's really what's needed now. People need to learn they only want to learn what they need. They don't want to be given prescribed courses. And that's what SkillsAssess is all about. And it's not restricted. It can be programmed, again, with AI to address any particular need. So you're not restricted in terms of who you address and how you help people.
Nice. So if I'm an HR director or an L&D director, something like that, and I'm thinking, yes, I want to upskill our workforce, take it further, farther, stronger, whatever ambitions they have, how would they actually take SkillsAssess, use it to upskill the workforce?
Well, we're just going to find out, firstly, what the business expectations are. So once we find out what those expectations are, we can then break it down into more granular opportunity, and we can actually then curate question banks for specific people. What SkillsAssess does is it will actually find out where the gaps are right across an organization. So you can have skills gaps by job role, by department, and by organization, with heat maps showing where the biggest gaps are. And that will help HR and managers, directors to pinpoint where the weaknesses are and just address those points to fill the skills gaps. It's a very flexible and very accurate process, which we haven't been able to do in the past.
Yeah. I did have a play around, had a look at the demo, and it was very cool in the fact that I could see the questions were changing shape, changing direction, depending on the role and the situation. And it's a very flexible, but then the questions then flexed again to determine my skills, awareness, knowledge, to help determine that gap and then visualize it using those sort of, I don't know what you call them, skills maps or something, but it's a very visual approach, really user-friendly, I thought.
Well, yeah, we can address the underprivileged. We can address people who are trying to get into work, so very basic skills. We can address very specific skills. It's a very flexible tool. Basically, we put the learning objectives at one end of the program, and we ask questions at the front end. The gaps are then identified, and it can be literally down to a very granular level.
And then to play devil's advocate, I'm guessing an HR leader or an L&D leader might be thinking, oh, I love this, that I can assess any person, any role, or a larger section of the workforce, the entire workforce, but then I'm locked into some e-learning library and it only works with that. Is that right? Are they locked in? How does that work?
It's a really good question. So they're not locked in. That's the whole design of this product, is that they can put their content at one end and ask the questions at the front end and use their own content. So they're not locked in at all. What we've found is that although there are increasing numbers of organizations now with skills assessment type products, they tend to be linked to platforms, linked to learning programs. We can produce content if people want it. So we have content over digital and over soft skills. But the way that the system is designed is you can actually tackle any challenge by determining what the objectives are going to be for the target audience, your target audience, and then asking questions directly related to that content. So it's completely agnostic, not locked in at all.
Nice. You've got my mind racing here because I'm thinking, and maybe I'm going too far into the weeds here, but an HR leader, for instance, would often be saying, well, how can we take our mission, vision, values for the organization, our business goals, whether they be annual, quarterly, whatever, and then cascade that through recruitment, selection, training, learning development, and cascade that through. But I'm guessing that now that we have AI, you can add a filter and underlay it with those learning skills, learning development programs, packages, but you could add the mission, vision, values into that learning. So you're assessing not just what do they know, yes or no, black and white stuff, but does it connect through to those mission and vision and values? I would see that as being able, you could cascade those bigger picture things into the tactical learning, which we've not really been able to do before. As I say, maybe I'm getting into the weeds, but I can see that happening, right?
Yeah, you can do that. And the other thing that we're looking at is also personalities. I mean, we're also introducing some additional questions so that you can actually see what personalities the assessment takers have and where their learning would be best suited. So it might be that you're not only giving them knowledge, but you're also looking at the personalities, make sure that if they have communication problems, that you might add some communication training. So we've got some pretty good plans for the future in terms of expanding the way that these questions are developed. But yes, you can put your mission objectives into this and measure by not just knowledge, but by intended, your future plans.
Yeah, very good, very good. Well, if I shift direction, then I noticed at the time of recording, you've got a webinar coming up relating to AI for HR and L&D leaders. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And I'm guessing that the recording is probably then available for people in the future in case you're listening to this after it's happened. But yeah, do you want to just give us an overview of that? Because it looks like it's a really interesting session.
Yeah, we've got some interesting people joining us on that. What we're looking at is whether AI is the right solution for workforce development or whether there are any pitfalls, dangers, and what we need to be aware of. And we've got some exciting people coming to join us. We've got Nabel Crowhurst, who is a speaker at conferences, and she's appeared on many podcasts as well. Perry Timms, who's founder and chief energy officer of PTHR. He's a TEDx speaker. We've got Carolyn Shepherd, the co-founder of Emmeline AI. She's an award-winning technologist. I think we're going to have some pretty lively discussions, but really the idea is to look at whether AI is going to be the future of workforce development and what the pitfalls are likely to be. So definitely a webinar worth coming and joining. I would recommend.
Excellent. So just to wrap up, having worked across training, certification, and now AI-powered assessment, what shifts are you seeing in how people learn and upskill?
I went to a conference at the beginning of the year. This was an EdTech and education conference. And all the stands I could see were promoting personalized learning. So personalized learning is definitely what everybody's thinking in terms of now. We need to give people what they need to learn. Then I went to a conference a little later on, and all the stands were promoting AI. And I think that basically the way the market is going now is personalized learning supported by AI. And I think the winners are going to be the people who have the most flexible solutions, because it's all very well having a very clever solution. But as you mentioned earlier, if you're tied in, locked in, it doesn't really help people. And this is the pushback we found with our e-learning company, Barefoot e-learning, is that we found that a lot of people felt that, we've already got our solutions sorted out. So what's a new e-learning company going to offer us that we already don't know? But with SkillsAssess, with our approach to skills assessment, we've realized in advance that people are going to have different requirements. And we built this system so that we can actually put their requirements at one end, and then we can really tackle all sorts. It's unimaginable, really. We can't see at the moment any limitations on what types of requirements we can service with this assessment tool. So I think that's what people are going to be looking for, independence. They won't want to be going down previous routes of off the shelf. And we're looking forward to some exciting times ahead.
That's excellent. So if people want to learn more about you and SkillsAssess, what should they do next?
Come and visit our website, get in contact with us, ask for a free trial. We just want to get people on board. SkillsAssess.ai is the website. We will happily offer free trials to people and give them a taste of what SkillsAssess is offering. So I recommend that.
Well, Robin, thank you so much for sharing your story, your advice, your insights, and also for sharing what's coming down the road. I've found it really interesting. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having us, and looking forward to the next phase of our careers.
Thanks for joining us today on A Better HR Business, the podcast that explores the world of HR consulting and HR tech businesses. For show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Remember to subscribe and share the show with any friends who are busy growing a HR business. Thanks, and see you next time.